Hello, and thank you for joining our Stream of Conscious ADHD podcast. I'm Heidi Faucette, along with my sister Heather. We are Gen X in menopause and surprise, newly diagnosed with ADHD. Since we found out about our ADHD during the pandemic, we have spent most weekends sitting in my backyard in Brooklyn with our champagne brunch discussing the impact, the reflections, the grief, the stories. Many adults are now finding they were never diagnosed, so we thought we would bring everyone into our backyard discovery sessions, hoping it will help. We laugh, we cry, we are stream of consciousness conversationalists. We hope you enjoy listening to our discovery and perhaps glean some comfort from it. Here we go, into the backyard.
We were talking about Rachel eating pudding. That was the thing that gave her dopamine, and then she moved on to wine or whatever. And I'm sure even the picky eater thing.
Oh, sure.
And then there are people who can't let things touch other things on their plate. That's an OCD thing, right?
It's a
It's on
it's on the menu of things.
I just think that they should scrap all of the names of all of these things.
Yeah.
And ADHD, all of it. And just say, this is my neuro menu. This is something I do. This is something I do. So it's like an executive function neuro thing, not a...
The concept of having a deficit doesn't make any sense. A disorder, that doesn't make any sense. It's about just being different. We recognize that the world has been constructed for neurotypicals, and the rest of us struggle hard to conform. We mask our asses off. We have coping things that we have to do, but it's energetically expensive. And to just acknowledge that not everybody is the same would be just super.
It would be. And to acknowledge that we're not the same, but it's not necessarily bad. It's not a negative thing.
Right. It's that we're different. It's not that we have a deficit or a disorder.
Yeah, but because somebody who is really, and maybe this is part of the cost of ADHD or the ADHD tax, is not just the energy and everything that it takes, but finding a career that you're good at and you can be motivated about and energized about. And if you never find that and you're just stuck in some job as an accountant and you can't even work your way up the chain because you're not able to be a superstar at it because you're working twice as hard to be just the standard. But if you found something that you were exceptional at because of whatever your spiciness was, we should all just have to do an evaluation at some point before we graduate high school. But I know that when you were talking about estrogen and how it changes your neurospicy menu, but then you just take the test over again.
Yeah. Because not everybody's the same for their whole life, right?
Right. I for sure had a couple changes. One was even that with the pregnancy with Grace.
Well, that's a life change that definitely changes your head. Yeah.
And hormones. And that's when my amygdala was like, okay, we're tired of going into overdrive for every freaking little thing.
Oh my God.
So yeah, no, I think we should. I think we should all be given a test to see where that they call it the ADHD superpower, and I'm still looking for mine. But I feel like if there's something you're passionate about, well, for me, I guess design, like I don't know. I'm exhausting myself now.
Well, I think you're raising an important point around the fact that ADHD needs to be, you need a different word to describe it. It's not a disorder. It's not a deficit. It's just on the continuum of brains, right? And the predominant amount of study has been done on young boys, and they exhibit certain symptoms. And historically, as we're seeing presently, women are being diagnosed at these late diagnoses at very, very high rates because, in fact, they were ignored in previous research and we're seeing that primarily women exhibit these internal their brains are very hyper as opposed to externally. And on top of it all are in addition to the whole concept in the workplace and in socially making sure that there is we talk about a lot about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that needs to include this as well, where not everyone is one deviation from the mean as it is measured previously, which I don't think is necessarily an accurate measurement of things as far as.
And I think another thing that attributes to why females were not only not diagnosed, but, and you and I had the same experience where we felt so like I am not normal, but would never raise our voices about it. And we grew up in this generation where you didn't. And especially with our parents that would be like, children should be seen and not heard, or children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, why does it sound weird all of a sudden?
Because it is weird.
And that asking for anything was like,
I think there's a
not
strange
accepted.
confluence of Gen X requirements to be extremely independent because the first time in near history, women went out to work, so we were left on our own. However, that wasn't the case in our house. We had other things that forced us to be independent, but I think our generation generally were forced to be more independent for whatever reason, but at the same time, there was a gap in information about mental health for everyone.
yeah.
And we know this ourselves from our own unpleasantness in that space and things that we've always feared about mental health. The ADHD part is different from anything we were expecting. Like, I was expecting to be like bipolar and manic depression, had some severe mental illness like our mom had, but instead she also probably had this as well.
Yeah.
And looking back, I can see it.
Yes.
However, it was not anything that it was not on anybody's radar.
Is there freaking even actual mental illness?
Yeah.
She did not get diagnosed until what, she 4?
And in professional circles, ADHD was not a thing for women or adults. It was only a thing for children.
Well, that's true. Maybe she didn't feel like she could say anything. And for us, feeling like, why don't I read like everyone else? Why do I have to read a sentence 18 times before it sinks in? Or why am I so nervous about reading in front of the class? Even though I could read fine, it just is that I didn't think I could read fine because I wasn't processing it. But I could read a paragraph, but then I was so like, people are looking at me. It was the whole the thing. But I never voiced it. I never said anything. And I think that probably our entire generation of women did it, just held it in, going
characterized as shy, right?
Right.
And that wasn't really the thing, right?
Right.
But we didn't know, okay, I can't characterize it any other way because there's no frame of reference. We had no frame of reference. People were characterizing us as shy, so we just accepted the label as shy.
Right. And I even remember this one girl, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I remember being really embarrassed for her once because she slipped and fell when giving a report up in front of the class. She was leaning against the board as she was doing her oral report, and she was leaning back on her heels, and I guess the nail from it hit the linoleum floor and just shink right out from underneath her. She landed on her butt. She must have hurt so bad. Pam Cooley. I remember her name.
Oh my God.
But she was very popular, but she was quirky. She wasn't shy, but she was quirky. And I just know by thinking back on her quirkiness that it was ADHD. But her flavor, her menu caused her to be outgoing and quirky, not shy and introverted. I just was so envious that she could just brush it off like it was nothing. And I would have been beet red, probably near tears, if not crying, and had to go run off to the bathroom without teacher approval or something.
Send me to her. And that's around the ADHD and the whole, like, this concept of being perceived, being overwhelming, and something that we choose to avoid. It's all about the response to how we think people are viewing us as opposed to what is really happening. But it's clearly something that happens among our group of people. It would be wonderful if there were more work to try to overcome that or try to talk people down from that. Because it's a matter of perception. And if you can overcome the perception with a different perception, then maybe that would be helpful. But it's interesting how it is a very common thing.
And just like when we were talking earlier about because you're programmed by your parents and society, and then some of that you internalize, and then you have the mean people. And the reason they're mean is because they're unhappy and it has nothing to do with you, but you internalize what they're spewing out.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so it all becomes super personal when in fact it is external. And if you knew that, gosh, so that would be.
Okay, here's the other thing. You see people walking around in their pajamas in the neighborhood, walking their dog, whatever. I would not go walk my dog or even take the recycling out in my pajamas in the front of the building because I feel like I would be judged.
That's kind of a generational thing, right? Because
Is that what it is?
I think there's ADHD kids who would walk outside in their pajamas and
Well,
have
for
no problem
sure.
with it.
Well, I think it's because it's their flavor, not because it's not an ADHD thing. I don't know how to say that.
Fear, well, our generation thinks it's weird and wrong to go outside your house with pajamas. Therefore, the perception of pajamas is causes you concern. Their concern about being judged are other issues entirely because their generation has other concerns.
But it's not even just their generation. I see people our generation doing it. I know Emily does it.
Yes, but she doesn't have ADHD and she's not worried about being perceived that way.
She totally has ADHD. She
Well,
did
then
not know it.
her concerns are different than ours. And that's the vexing part of the things we're sensitive about are different.
Yeah. And that's it. So even if you have a menu item that is...
There's another menu
there's
that
a whole...
comes off of the menu.
Oh my God.
It's like a precision tree, only infinitely.
Well, it's like, okay, I have a menu item of tacos, but on it is guacamole, not salsa.
Right. No cilantro. It tastes like soap.
I love
Who
cilantro.
said that? People. It's a genetic thing, actually. If you have a particular genetic variant, you think cilantro tastes like soap, and I'm like, I could eat that every day of my life.
Yeah, on top of it all, the genetics piece of it, the physical aspect of ADHD and the posture and this and that and the other, and we were talking about, and there are other things that are genetic. So we've got like genetic, and ADHD is genetic, right?
That's right.
But just like some certain physical attributes, we've got things coming up from genes, from upbringing, nature versus nurture, society, actual menu items from executive function. It's like, how are we even functioning?
We're fucking hot messes is what we are. Because we
don't feel like we are. I know in certain
respects. I am.
You're not. You're just stressed out.
I am stressed out, but that's not a hot mess.
But what I'm saying is you have been doing clinical trials and kicking ass at it because you've always gotten rave reviews, and every time you're like, panic, they're doing layoffs, they're gonna, and I'm like, no, everyone loves you. You do an amazing job. But again, you see yourself completely differently than everyone else does.
Lots of ADHD people have imposter syndrome.
Oh, yes.
And because we have to put in so much more energy than anybody else to do the same thing, we are constantly concerned about are we measuring up? Are we measuring up? And we never know.
We don't know. But you put in more hours. I get that what you do is super important and lives depend on it. And that's why you are passionate and put in the hours. But I know that it's also exhausting and stressful for you.
Yeah. No matter what level you reach, you always kind of feel like,
I'm not doing enough.
Is it enough?
Right. I'm not doing, yes.
Because we become perfectionists because we have to be, because we're trying to overcome the errors that we experienced in the past. So there's always this overcompensation, all the extra energy, all the spoons. It's all about the spoons, right? Are you familiar with the spoons?
No.
So people with ADHD, this is how we describe how we try to manage, right? Everyone is given a number of spoons to manage our lives. And I know at first it sounds, what? Why?
Yeah.
And I don't know why spoons, the bee,
We need to put the flowers near the bee.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
It's all good. They're all buzzing about. They're all like having a happy day. They're like, wait, new flowers?
know,
Like, we're on it.
And there and there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's the spoon theory. So
Okay.
you
You've
have
given
a
us-
certain amount of spoons every day, and you use them as currency as far as energy is concerned. I don't know why spoons is the thing, but it's the thing.
Okay.
So you have a certain number of spoons per day, and you use X number of spoons at work. You use X number of spoons in your personal life. Because our work is so important and it fuels our personal life, we find that we spend way more spoons than a neurotypical person on work because we're trying to just keep afloat and we have no spoons left for our personal life. So we feel very burned out, exhausted, and we don't give what we think we need to give to our personal life. And I can relate to this entirely. If I have like a traffic ticket that I need to pay, even though I have the money to pay it, I will put that off until the bitter end, until they send it to a collection agency. Like recently, I had a bill at NYU and I'm like, I have to pay this. But I'm like, all my spoons are over here. And so I got a letter going, oh, you've been sent to a collection agency. I'm like, oh, I have the money to pay it, but I can't focus on it because all my spoons are here. All of them are here. And this has been historically how I've always been. All my spoons go to work. None of my spoons go to my personal life.
I get what you're saying, and I understand that. And I don't even feel like that's a
But when you have children,
spicy thing, because I feel like there are so many people who are workaholics or are put everything into work.
yeah, that's probably true.
But having ADHD, you put so many more.
Because at the end of the day, I feel like I can't focus. I literally have to just shut down. I spend so much energy trying to manage the crazy that I don't have any energy left to manage my own crazy. And that bubbles up in a variety of ways, of course. And you try to mitigate. But like today, I was like, oh gosh, I guess I should pay that, since it's not like I didn't have the money to pay it.
Right.
I couldn't focus on it. And then I felt really bad.
Do you know what I have Rachel do? Since she's very ad hoc-y through her day where things pop up and that's the thing she's addressing.
Mm-hmm.
Or she has something that she needs to work on, but all these little tiny things that will take 5 minutes, she never gets to them.
Yeah,
So
same. That's an example. Like go to NYU and pay the bill. But I was like, no, I can't do it. I have to focus on this. I can't focus on this. 5 minutes.
I know.
The spoons. All the spoons are over here.
So what I have Rachel do, we use a tool called Trello for project management. And so she's got all these cards on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And one of her cards sits at the top of the board and it's always there because it's a running list. It's called her power hour, where she takes 1 hour a day, and you may only be able to afford 30 minutes a day, but it's a list of things that are only items that will take 5 minutes or less. And she will block it off on her calendar, and then she will go to the card and just start going and knocking them off. And she said it's such a great feeling to be able to click a thing and check it off.
Yes, I do this as well, but then I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. I push it to the next day.
Yes. Oh my God. That is my MO right there. And I can tell.
And I have a whole pile of things. Like I have a meeting thing for 30 minutes and I have a list of things that will take 5 minutes. And I'm like, my mind is just mush from the day.
Right.
I will do it tomorrow.
Yes.
And then it just boop, boop.
So I know that if I do it in the morning, it'll get done. But it's like, okay, I need to do this, but that place isn't open at that time in the morning. So I've got to wait till later. But then that,
if later happens, it's the next day.
Joint might, yeah.
Yeah. Same. It's so frustrating.
It is.
But when you do the thing, you're just pissed at yourself.
Because it took 5 seconds.
Because it took 5 seconds.
Yeah. No, I get it. I do that with the cat
story of my freaking life.
I do that with the cat's fountain all the time. Her little drinking fountain is sitting on the counter. It's been sitting there for probably 4 days. And I put a dish of water down. She's probably like, you don't like me. You don't love me anymore. I set it up there and I'm like, there are too many pieces of it that I have to clean.
It becomes strangely overwhelming and you're just like,
and it takes 5 minutes.
Yes.
What?
No, I get it. This is the story of my life. I'm like, all my spoons, I'm like, even when I'm not doing the thing, I'm thinking about these other things that are high priority. And then I diminish the things that are my personal things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't have time for that. I'm exhausted. I just want to stare at the wall. I'm going to move it to tomorrow. And becomes the thing.
Yes.
It just moves.
Our reason for this podcast is to support and uplift women in recognizing the impact undiagnosed ADHD has on their lives and to know that they're not alone. Discovery and grieving for what life could have been if we had only known and had help can be hard sometimes. If you have any thoughts you would like to share, you can email us at genx.adhd.sisters@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. #GenX ADHD Sisters.